For 100 years, the dream of an independent India was this fire that burned in the hearts of millions. People from every single walk of life, Bhagat Singh, Rani Lakshmibai, Ashfaq Khan, they sacrificed everything for one single day, freedom. But when that day finally came, at the stroke of the midnight hour, that dream of a new dawn was met with an unimaginable nightmare.
While leaders were giving these grand speeches, millions of ordinary people were just caught in a storm of unbelievable violence. This survivor's memory, it's just one of millions. It's a reminder that behind all the politics were real human beings whose lives were absolutely shattered, and their screams of pain were so much louder than any cheers of celebration.
So, this is the central question we have to ask, right? How did a century-long fight for liberation end in the largest mass migration and one of the deadliest massacres in human history? Well, the answers aren't simple. They lie deep in a really complex story of culture, power, and politics. So let's dive in and see how this tragedy unfolded. To really understand the partition of 1947, we have to go back, way, way back. See, this idea that Hindus and Muslims were two completely separate nations that could never get along, that wasn't some ancient truth. It was a modern political creation. Let's take a look at how a land of coexistence was slowly and very deliberately fractured. For over 1,000 years, Islamic rule and culture wove themselves right into the fabric of the Indian subcontinent. Now, what's really interesting here is just how deep these roots go. Islam actually arrived first through trade, not through conquest. And over the centuries, the vast majority of Muslims in India weren't foreign invaders, but local people who converted, blending their ancestral customs with their new faith. So when the East India Company took control, they brought in a whole new system, and it was all centered around English education. The response from the two major communities was, completely different. Many in the Hindu community adapted. They learned English, and they took up roles in the new administration. But for a lot of Muslims, who had been the ruling class, this was a tough pill to swallow. They resisted this new culture at first, and because of that, they started to fall behind in education, in wealth, and in political influence.
And then came 1857. Now, this was no small mutiny. It was a massive rebellion where Hindus and Muslims fought side by side, totally united against a common enemy. They even rallied behind the last Mughal emperor, Bahadur Shah Zafar, as their leader. This display of unity, it absolutely terrified the British. It taught them a lesson that would define the next 90 years of their rule.
So here's the crucial point. The British realized that to control India, they had to break its unity. So they implemented a very deliberate divide and rule strategy. First, they painted Muslims as the main instigators of the revolt. Then, they partitioned Bengal along religious lines. But the real masterstroke was introducing separate electorates. This meant only Muslims could vote for Muslim candidates and Hindus for Hindu candidates. For the very first time, your religious identity was now officially your political identity, forcing politicians to appeal to religious feelings instead of common interests.
With the political landscape now carved up like this, the 20th century saw these seeds of division just grow into full-blown communal politics. What started as a strategy for political rights soon spiraled into a demand for a separate nation, pushing India towards a point of no return.
In 1930, the great poet and philosopher Allama Iqbal floated this powerful idea, a consolidated state for the Muslims of northwest India. But you have to look closely at his words. Within the body politic of India, he was arguing for autonomy, for a state within a united federal India, not for a separate country. This is a critical distinction that gets misinterpreted all the time. Just 3 years later, a student at Cambridge University named Chaudhry Rahmat Ali took Iqbal's idea and pushed it to a radical new extreme. He created the name Pakistan and, for the first time, explicitly called for a sovereign nation completely separate from India. At the time, his idea was pretty much dismissed by everyone, even by leaders of the Muslim League, as just a student's fantasy. But that fantasy was about to become a formidable political movement. And what's really incredible about this is the sheer speed of this transformation. In the 1937 elections, the Muslim League did really poorly. But by 1946, it had won nearly every single seat reserved for Muslims. How? By transforming the idea of Pakistan from a fringe concept into a powerful rallying cry centered around one single message: Islam is in danger. Even then, there was one last desperate attempt to keep India whole. The British Cabinet Mission Plan of 1946 proposed this really complex three-tiered structure. a weak central government with autonomous groups of Hindu-majority and Muslim-majority provinces. It was a compromise. It rejected a separate Pakistan, but gave Muslims a lot of autonomy. For a moment, it really seemed like it might work. But deep-seated mistrust and political fighting ultimately caused the whole thing to collapse. The failure of the cabinet mission was the final crack in the dam. In protest, the Muslim League called for a direct action day to show the strength of Muslim feeling. In Calcutta, what was meant to be a day of protest descended into an unprecedented wave of communal slaughter. The Great Calcutta Killings lit a fire that soon engulfed the entire subcontinent. The argument was no longer being made with words, but with knives and torches. And this brings us to the final tragic act. With the country burning, the British decided to rush their exit. A British lawyer, Cyril Radcliffe, a man who had never even been to India before, was given just 5 weeks to draw a line on a map that would decide the fate of millions. The result was an absolute catastrophe.
Try to wrap your head around this number: 14 million people. That's more than the entire population of many countries. 14 million human beings were forced to leave the homes their families had lived in for centuries, becoming refugees in their own homeland. They packed whatever they could carry and walked towards a future they couldn't even imagine, all because a new border had suddenly made their homes part of a foreign country.
And this is the number that is almost impossible to comprehend. Up to 2 million people, men, women, and children, were murdered in the carnage that followed. 2 million lives just extinguished, not in a war against a foreign army, but in a frenzy of neighbor turning on neighbor, all in the name of these new nations.
The stories from this time are filled with just unimaginable horror. This wasn't a clean political separation, it was a bloodbath. Trains would arrive at stations completely silent, filled not with refugees, but with their butchered bodies. A gruesome message sent across the new border. Women in particular suffered unimaginable horrors, becoming symbols of dishonor and targets of the most brutal violence. In the end, the very logic of partition was flawed. The idea that people of the same religion would form a unified nation, it was proven false just 24 years later, in 1971, when East Pakistan, citing cultural and linguistic oppression, broke away to become Bangladesh. It was a devastating confirmation that religion alone is not enough to bind a people together.
And that leaves us with this final, crucial question. The story of partition is a timeless and terrifying lesson. It shows what can happen when fear is weaponized, when religion is used as a political tool. So today, when we hear rhetoric about our religion being in danger, we have to ask, what is this fear being used to hide? A lack of jobs? Poor education? A failure to keep us safe? Because the legacy of 1947 warns us that the cost of these distractions is paid not by the powerful, but by ordinary people, in blood.